Hello and welcome to Brinklow Marina, where for the third year in a row it is time for the Electrica Show, the very specialist narrowboat show all about electric drive, propulsion, hybrids, solar panels, batteries, all that good stuff if you are interested in the modern way of canal boating. By the time I arrived, there were plenty of cars parked in the field, indicating strong interest in the subject matter. It was a gloriously hot day, an ideal environment for a topic that relies heavily on solar power to make it worthwhile. Look at all those sparkles. No expense spared here on the signage. My plan for this video is not to show off glossy boat tours. There's plenty of that on YouTube already. What I wanted to do was to play devil's advocate in asking the exhibitors and speakers about safety on electrically powered boats, specifically in terms of battery fires. There have been tales, and well documented in some cases, of lithium batteries exploding supposedly or being on fire. The insurance certificate I got, the document I got this year said do not leave lithium batteries on charge while you were away from the boat, which is a bit of a problem if you've got solar. So there's fear around lithium. To what extent should we be scared?
Okay, so with any new technology, there's always going to be urban myths, miscommunication, misunderstanding, and I think that's very true because you mentioned lithium batteries, and that is a generic term that covers a whole suite of different chemistries. And in the marine area, the one that we all seem to be focusing on, quite rightly because it's a very stable technology, is lithium iron phosphate 4, which you'll see also called LFPs, and that is a very thermally stable chemistry that catches fire but at much higher temperatures. So and before it even catches fire, the key thing is that it starts to gas and it emits a hydrogen-based, quite toxic gas, and that is actually, for LFPs, is the critical thing, and that's the thing that the industry has got to really understand and get behind and develop ways in which we have gas detectors for LPG, so we need to start thinking about gas detectors for lithiums, because that is the first trigger point. But so long before it will catch fire, it's the gassing that's the key thing. If we can detect that and we can sound an alarm, get people off the boat, then that will be a big step forward.
But insurers are notoriously twitchy, and new policies are banning unattended charging, which seems to rule out solar. How practical then is this electric revolution?
If you're an insurer, you'll look at lithium batteries and you'll think, oh my goodness, this could potentially be a risk, this could affect our bottom line, all the boats that we currently cover. But the reality is that those boats, if they are fitting lithium batteries, they are the LFPs, and they are a safer technology, and that's an important differentiator. But that's not to say that the industry hasn't got work to do to get more and more installers trained up on the new technologies, to get certified experts that will actually be able to look at these systems and approve them. So the industry's got some work to do, but I think we need to all take a breath and look at it pragmatically and work out solutions where people can continue to fit these new batteries, still get insurance for their boats, still be able to use them when they, I heard today about somebody who went for their boat to be blacked, and they couldn't get their boat blacked because they had lithium batteries on board, and the guy that was doing the blacking couldn't get the insurance to work on that boat. So there are issues that we all need to sort of wake up to and try and pragmatically work our way through.
Part of the show is a large marquee filled with exhibitor stands showing batteries, motors, solar and such like, and on this warm day, some hot dogs too. I wanted to pursue the battery safety theme because it's become such a hot topic, and I wanted to know what the future holds.
Lithium as a technology is very safe. I think there's a statistic saying you're more likely to be hit by a lightning than have a lithium fire. But even still, it's a concern because it does happen, undeniably. The risk is always there.
just briefly talk me through then, for the average person who doesn't really understand, what are those protections that stop batteries having problems?
Primarily the BMS. It manages any faults. You've got over discharge protection, under voltage protection, heat sensors as well. So the BMS is there to prevent the thermal runaway and any faults that may occur.
The new kid on the block is sodium batteries, which I understand are coming into production, but definitely on the horizon, and they are said to be even safer. So what is it about sodium that is better, and when can we get our hands on them?
Well, they're still in production, so it's going to take some time for the market to adapt them. There are multiple things that we need to look at first. The inverters, they need to have a specific setting to accept the sodium because of the voltage variance. Different voltage operating than the lithium. The safety, definitely an aspect. They're safer now, primarily because sodium is less reactive than the lithium, so there's a lower chance of a fault. So that's something that the customers definitely look at. So it's still some time away until they're cost efficient. The abundance of minerals is one thing that's driving the technology. You're able to operate sodium at lower temperatures, even for starts. So some battery manufacturers, some company manufacturers are from car makers all around the world are also looking at this as a solution.
Will we be able to drop a sodium battery in as a direct replacement? You've already mentioned there need to be some changes to chargers and things.
Not at the moment. So that's why I mentioned sodium's got a different operating voltage. Okay, so it's going to go lower than the lithium. If you just have a standard inverter set to lithium, it will cut off at a certain voltage, which means you're not going to be able to get that amount of power required from the sodium. So let's say you have a lithium battery, you're able to take 95% out of it. With a sodium, without the changes to the inverters, you're only going to be able to take about 60%. So there need to be more advances on the inverter side to be able to properly charge and discharge the sodium and take full power out of it.
Any idea of when it will become widespread?
Well, difficult to say. The biggest cell manufacturers in the world are now already mass producing sodium. That's definitely driving the technology. It's starting with the car makers, with the energy storage, and then it's going to trickle down into smaller markets like 12 volts, 24 volts. Possibly, we'll have something this year, yeah, on the 12 volt, 24 volt side. And then it just remains to be seen how soon they can become competitive.
I've tried electric boating, and it is glorious, so quiet and tranquil. So the relative safety of LFP batteries, if they're properly installed, is reassuring, and sodium will be better still. But it turns out that before any lithium goes up in flames, there's a different and arguably bigger problem to deal with.
If there's a faulty install or a BMS that's quite fragile, it can cause a thermal runaway. So it can set off gases, 2,000 litres of gases for one cell, and 40% of that is hydrogen, which we know is explosive. Experts in the field for many years were saying that even if that gas was in a containment, it couldn't cause an explosion because 20% of the gases are carbon dioxide, which makes hydrogen immune for being explosive. But then we've had incidents recently that have proved otherwise. The one last year had a fragile MOSFET type of BMS on it. There was no ventilation for that battery, and it was in a closed confinement, and the install was installed incorrectly, so it had everything against it. The way that install could have been saved is if the system, which is now in the ISOs, was technical enough to be able to control its charges properly and to be able to shut down the power properly. And it's not the battery that catches fire, it's the gases that it lets out in that fault condition. There are systems like these that will pretty much make it impossible for that cell to get into that state. But then if there's still the slight bit of possibility, if we can get those gases and put them into the outside atmosphere where they're not going to harm anybody, then that's just going that step further. The installer needs to understand every aspect of the system. The fact that it can deliver such high current is also another consideration. people don't respect 12 volt because it can't give you an electric shock, but it can also create high amperages that can cause a fire, and that's a bigger killer than the electric shock risk, you see.
It seems that even the people like the BSS are now finally waking up to lithium, as are insurers. My most recent insurance contract said, if you've got lithium on board, you must not leave it charging while the boat is unattended.
Yeah.
Well, people have got solar. Those two things are incompatible. It seems that the insurers and the BSS may be becoming overcautious and just not accepting the practicalities of boat life.
No, but what the insurers are getting mixed up with, and the advice that you've been, or the questions you've been asked from your insurers, that's their one document that they've got which covers all of lithium technology. So they're talking about your phones, your vapes, your laptops. Now they're the technologies that you won't want to leave on charge when unattended, because the systems inside those small devices are not clever enough to protect themselves, and the battery is far more volatile from self-propagating. And there was an incident recently where a small Wi-Fi device was stuck to a window and it got hot enough, but it got lithium polymer in it and it caught fire and the whole boat burned down. That's a completely different chemistry to lithium iron phosphate. The problem we've got is the insurers don't understand the difference. Now what we need is a regulated system where everyone's talking to each other. Now the ISOs have got it right. The surveyors are following that set of guidance. Boat safety will get the message eventually, but the insurers now need to understand the difference and ask the right questions. They're asking my customers, do you have a lithium fire extinguisher on board? With lithium iron phosphate, you don't use a Class D fire extinguisher. There's completely different advice around it. Class D fire extinguisher is for your phones and your laptops and that kind of thing. And so is the question that you just brought up as well about not charging it unattended.
Well, I tried my best, but it seems the professionals agree as long as you get it done properly, there's no fear from electric boating. But there are other technical considerations as well.
We feel now that motor technology is evolving. Essentially, with an electrically driven boat, the torque consideration of the motor speed, the motor torque delivery are quite key when trying to match against your prop size. That will ultimately affect how effectively you drive the boat. So a motor that's chosen carefully that delivers a significant amount of torque at the correct RPM to suit the propeller that you have installed is a good combination.
And presumably, therefore, there are bad combinations.
We have come across bad combinations, yes. We've seen undersized props where we do, they've been maybe termed egg whisks, where people have a playful term for them. But yes, where the motor's doing an awful lot of spinning, but the boat is barely moving. And to get that right balance, you need a motor that can deliver the correct amount of torque to turn the correct prop that you've installed.
The owners of all the shiny boats on display were certainly in agreement. Electric is the way to go. And that's the idea of this annual exhibition, to try to allay any fears about the new technologies.
The essence of Electrica, as we mentioned before, it's trying to maybe promote but also dispel some of the negativity, and also to try and encourage people that it is a viable route to take. It's not a black art, it's not sticking with diesel just because it's a tried and tested technology. Electric propulsion is moving forward rapidly, and the more of these installations that are on the network, the more that technology will evolve. It's the same as EVs. It will be a growing industry.